Quarterfinals is done, everyone. The last series just finished, and I gotta say, it was a banger. It was a complete surprise. I pretty sure to everyone, the fact that FlyQuest was able to take GenG of all teams to 5 games and had a real shot at winning this entire thing. Like, I didn't think that was gonna happen. And I didn't think that was gonna happen because I think GenG is not exactly a good matchup for them team-wise, in that GenG is very capable at playing a clean, disciplined game, like which FlyQuest does try to do themselves. Like, they try to be a disciplined, like, wear you down. Like, we have a jungle-centric farming player, and we'll just go off that, and GenG should pound for pound be better. But they weren't. At least in some senses, they were not. It did show up in the series. It did actually show up in the series, but not till later. And I just have to say, it was just a really fantastic job by FlyQuest. And I mean, we're just gonna go straight into it game by game. The first game, they open up with very obvious bans, right? Like, we have the Ivern, we have the Renekton, these are all very obvious, like, we're targeting Bippo, we're targeting Ivern, or targeting Inspired, right? And they're banning Aurora, pretty common, Yone, and then the Ezreal, which this ends up, I think this gets dropped later on, and that's mostly because, like, they realize, like, Phases is not really that good on Ezreal, or at least, like, he's not performing on this day on it. And so they first pick Skarner, and it's like, okay, first pick Skarner, not too bad. Ashe, really good pick. Seraphine, completely different, really unexpected, has shielding. Yes, people have played Ashe Seraphine, so it could be in the bot lane, could be in the mid lane. You're not 100% sure. And they draft Rumble Ahri. And this is where they kind of lose me right away, because I think the most obvious pick, is Galio. Like, you probably would always slam Galio because Galio is performing versus the Rumble. He's a deterrent, and Seraphine's a deterrent to Rumble as well. Like, both these picks into this champion is, like, already pretty annoying for Rumble. And they have two ways to kind of reduce your impact. And then Ahri, like, it's fine, but it's like, I don't know, Skarner Ahri, like, it's fine, I guess. It's not like the greatest of all picks. So already in the first three, I'm like, holy shit, FlyQuest has, like, a really good direction they're going with this. Rel Rakan, they ban a Cass and Mumu. So, like, they're just doing a lot of, like, pocket pick bans, right? They take Xin Zhao. So now it's like, okay, well, maybe we're playing an Enchanter with Xin Zhao, so he's going to be, like, buffed and strong. Maybe. They take Jinx Leona. And I feel like this pick here was just, like, them worried that they're just going to get outscaled. So, like, they're just going to try to pick Jinx, and hopefully that will curve it all out. But it just doesn't really feel right at all. I mean, the Rakan ban ended up being very, very good. That was this was a very crucial ban, because XR and just Xayah in general seems pretty good for this game. Like, Xayah, if you go in as Xin, Galio, like, all this shit she can pretty much avoid. And when she does a pullback, it's very good, right? So that's not that bad. There's Kai'Sa Nautilus, and Nautilus is actually not bad in terms of just, like, dealing with, finding catches on Ashe and just creating situations for you to actually, like, do your fights. And then you have Kai'Sa, who, like, you're just basically going all in on the one shot. Granted, your poke does get reduced from, like, these champions, and you can't really. The only thing is, like, you want to go the AP variant because it's definitely way better, but you already have Rumble or Ahri, so it's probably bad. So it's probably definitely more sided on Xayah if you're going to look into anything. And you're definitely not going to pick fucking Aphelios into this. That sounds dreadful. Or unless they're going to try to play for lane and then they play, like, a Caitlyn version or whatever. But they chose Jinx. And so already it's like, okay, so you're just picking this champion because you're worried about your scaling situation, right? And they finish off with an Alistar. They flex in mid. And at first I was a little worried because I'm like, are they going to have enough damage? Because they're playing Seraphine Galio as their solos. So Ashe needs to do big time damage. And it ended up being fine because for one, I'll say that GenG would have had a pretty solid game to play out, regardless of everything that's, like, addressed here. Because on the first grubs, for some odd reason, Chovy flash charms I think he flash charms. Or he R1 charms FlyQuest. But they were never in any danger, and Busio was zoning like 3 people. So no one could connect if Chovy went for this. And Chovy was in a super good spot where, like, if this is the wall, right, and it curves out this way, and then there's like the red buff, right? So FlyQuests are like here, right? And then you have like this brush, right? Like this brush here, and then you have the line brush here. So they have a TP coming on here. So there's a TP. This is Chovy. Chovy's in this brush. And then his teammates are like all like, you know, like over here or whatever. Like his teammates are like this. Chovy was in the perfect spot to just sit in the brush, and these guys will never be able to get the grubs. It's literally impossible to play for this objective if Chovy just sits in the brush. But he goes for it, gets surprised, CC'd, one shot, and then they quickly snowball through the rest of them, and their comp just takes off from there. And at that point, like FlyQuest, like every single fight, you know, we've seen like GenG kind of unsure what they need to do. How should they even start situations? They're getting kind of worried about like, are we even going to be able to like beat this in the later stages with Jinx? Like they definitely seem like pressured to make something happen instead of believing that they can outplay them in like standalone fights and later on. And yeah, it just got worse and worse. Beppo found some flanks, and that was it. It was a really, really good draft plan by FlyQuest in the end of the day. You know, like, well played to them. Like, it was very impressive. You go into the second game. Now, GenG, like, obviously the first thing in your head is, like, we don't want to play against these defensive comps who just kind of, like, outscale you through shielding and just, like, be annoying, so we're going to get rid of it. And that's what they did. They got rid of Seraphine, Ivern, still mostly the same bans by FlyQuest, except they throw a Nocturne ban in because Orianna's up, and they just don't want to deal with that, right? So they take Ashe. Okay, so we have Ashe. Ashe was a good pick. Orianna, Ezreal. So now we're going into the Ezreal. This was open, and so they see it as a very high priority. I'm going to say right now that I think Ezreal is only good if you're like guys like Elk and Viper. Like, this champion is just a completely different pick when someone's on it that's like just insanely good. Like, if you've ever looked at like the one tricks that are like in China that play Ezreal, again, it's not even an 80 carry. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. Because a normal 80 carry, like Ashe, is a lot on orb walking, you know, spacing, doing these kinds of things. But Ezreal is he has to do a lot more predictions for his skill shot, and you have to hit your skill shots and be smart about what you're targeting in the first place, like people who are slowed, CC'd, so you're getting a guaranteed proc, because if you miss your Q, it can be down for 2 seconds, and that's a lot of DPS you lose. So Ezreal's a very, very proficient champion, like, if you can man him. And so they're going for that, and I don't know if this is necessarily the right call for FlyQuest. Like, I don't know if Masu's like Ezreal's like exactly there. But they went it. It's like a very common pick into Ashe. They take the Nidalee. Now, if anyone knows, this is like the LCK special, because in playoffs, this was banned like all the time. And not only was it banned all the time, because there was several series where people were just slamming Nidalee and they were playing for camps and like invading off 3 camps. And it just happened over and over again. It was incredibly obnoxious. So when I saw these first 3 picks, I thought, holy shit, GenG has like a very solid start. I'm starting to feel like they're gonna win, because this is exactly how I thought they would approach the game. I thought they would approach this by having, you know, strong priority lanes with a clearing jungler who can press. And this was great. Then we go into the bans: Trist, Rel, Xin Zhao, Vi. And then they pick a Nunu. And now, of course, naturally you're thinking, okay, Nunu is like, it's fine. I don't know if it's necessarily like the greatest of picks to do here still. You know, he could have just gone the Sejuani in the end of the day, and it would have been a very straightforward pick with good pull, and would have rounded their comp out pretty well. But they take Nunu so they can play more heavily around mid, I guess. it just wasn't like exactly like the grandest of champions to take here. So this one's a little like ballsy, you know? It's a bit ballsy. Like it would have made more sense if they just took Renekton and let Nunu like fall here in case it's like an actual good Nunu game, but they took Nunu there. And so they called it out with a Kassadin. And I'm gonna be honest, one, I do think the Kassadin pick is like not it's I don't know, it's a very scary pick to take if I'm GenG because right now you're drafting Ashe, Nidalee, Jax, like you're like you want to play for the map. But now you have a Kassadin, so you can't really play for the map the way you want to. And you're also against Nunu. And even though like you can cancel Nunu R, you can do these sorts of things, you're still gonna be pretty prone to ganks, right? Like that definitely is gonna be a thing. And he managed to just still outplay it. And it was just it's just not nothing else you can really say about it. Like he got really low, Chovy, he overstayed, no flash. You know, Quad got his flash. It was really good by Quad. And then I already knew it was probably going to fail, but Busio goes for the mid dive, which is him and Quad. And Busio doesn't have any sums. So already I'm like, okay, well, I hope he realizes like by having no sums, like if this somehow doesn't go at all the way he thinks, he has no flash to get out of there. So he could just die to the turret. Like that definitely is a worry that I had in the back of my head. He goes in, Kassadin gets the Q off. He gets his W off to get the mana, then his Q comes off, so he has a spell shield to deal with the Ori damage, and then since he had no flash, he just died. And then later on, we have a gank by Nunu, and it was actually pretty well timed and everything. But again, Chovy had the resolve to wait out the Nunu R. Like once the Nunu R came up, then he Q'd, canceled it, and Nunu was already like taking a bunch of turret shots, and he died. And it just got progressively worse and worse. Also in these lane swaps, it's good to note that Bwipo was having issues with the lane swaps in terms of just taking too much damage. Like he was stepping out of his turret because the way they like to play Renekton, like so they play Renekton plus their support, right? Like they're laning. Okay, that was beautiful. Whatever. Anyways, they're playing Renekton plus whatever support, right? In this case, it's Rakan. And they like to 2v2 the enemy duo, right? Because Renekton has his W, Rakan has his W, like CC, and you actually have some pressure. The only thing is, multiple times they stretch themselves out, and he ate too much damage, and then he just gets stove, he gets killed, and then Renekton's in the shitter. And if Renekton's not having a good time, and you're against a Jax, who's already a complicated matchup, he could never side. He couldn't win the side versus Jax. Yes, Bwipo was lucky enough that like some of the dives and like angles that GenG looked on him ended up being bad, but they never had any side control. It was a really, really hard game, and GenG just won. So now you're going from a defensive comp to a more normalized comp with a Nunu, and it just didn't work because this guy just got fucking fed, and this guy like messed up the game. Okay. Sure, we go into the third game. You know, we're still banning Aurora as FlyQuest. I guess they don't play it. That's not really great. They ban Ashe. That's a good note by them that they're actually removing this. Ivern, Yone, and then they ban Nicolista. So now it's their turn to play Ezreal, right? It's their turn to play Ezreal. And we take Skarner, Sejuani, Kai'Sa, Rakan. So they're taking Rakan like every single time they can. Okay. Sylas has very good ultis. Like these two ultis are pretty good for him to steal already. So not bad, right? Olaf ban, Orianna, they take Renekton away because they see an Olaf, a Cassante removed. Now here's the thing. Bwipo doesn't have a Gnar, and I feel like this is like one thing that's a little weird is that Bwipo doesn't have a Jax and he doesn't have a Gnar. So like Jax is getting removed in the bans, but Gnar isn't, and we're just not trying to pick it. And it's clearly at this point for MSI for Worlds, he's like a very good pick. Like it's definitely like I should pick Gnar kind of situation, and he's just not going for it. And I don't know why that's the case. That GenG, like Keen does play it, but like they're just not doing it. They'd rather do a takeaway, right? Like this is like clearly like we're gonna take this away because like I bet you can't play other shit. But then he plays the Urgot, and the Urgot was pretty good. Honestly, it was pretty good. And the Zeri, I didn't necessarily believe this at first because right now Silas has 4 ultis that are really good, right? Like he had, wow, this just beautiful writing. Anyways, he has Skarner ulti, Rakan, Urgot, Zeri. All really good ults for Silas, right? All really good. And then they slam a Braum in the end. A Braum against Kai'Sa, Urgot, Zeri. Again, Braum can get a lot of value. Okay, so we have good pull. We get some pretty good value, and we just have to play it out. What ends up happening is that, you know, Zeri got a lot of good grass stacks. You know, she actually at least benefited from having those ruins and being a lot tankier. She also went Stridebreaker build and like made sure that she was going to be effective in the game, like not one shot or anything. And that ended up paying off big time later, like really, really good. Like the fact that Quad was such a force in fights was a major like issue for GenG to deal with. And Pays also just played pretty bad. There was a fight by the bot tier 1. And by the way, it was a dive by GenG, which made no sense, by the way. They did a 3v2 dive with full sums on FlyQuest bot lane. And naturally, it didn't work, but they got Whippo TP, so it's good. They got Whippo TP. And Whippo was even really low, so like he was going to get his base late. It was really nice, and then Pays fucked it up. Pays killed himself, which then resulted in Lehens killing himself. And then it was just off to the races because suddenly Masu is 2-0, and now they have a real thing to like a real like source to play around. Now don't get me wrong, Whippo definitely got fucked in this game a bit by Keen and Canyon playing around him, but Masu is so massive for this game, and we got into the fights. And, you know, huge props to, like, Inspired, into Whippo. Like, these guys play really well around their core ADs, like, their actual carries. And that was kind of the difference maker. Like, outside of Whippo doing one play where he did, like, a flash engage when they had full control of Dragon, that basically killed himself in this. And, like, Masu couldn't hit at all. So it was clearly really bad, right? But when they had fights where they got to pull back as these guys initiated, because that's all they can really do outside of letting Ezreal have like poke advantage, they were able to play around it while Masu hits, and they did so much damage that they just melted them. And they ended up getting the big turning fight because Keen to look for a flank. It was a really good flank by Keen, but Masu had stopwatch, and it was perfectly timed. And then Inspired had a flash E that just completely put Keen in the gutter, and even though Keen had a very, very solid game, like there was definitely like moments in this game where I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's so good, because his Renekton pick is not even that insane at this point, like when it's getting to the mid-late stages, and yet he is still having insane value from the fights, like pushing Masu out and still surviving, but it was not enough. And yeah, FlyQuest just kind of outfought them, and it was really well played. This was a very standard game that FlyQuest won. Then we go into game 4, and it's like, okay, this is it. We can get it here. We can get it. Still banning Aurora, still having a Jax ban. They're still banning Seraphine, Ashe first pick. Now we're the ones on Ezreal. And keep in mind, now Ezreal, after the game 4, Ezreal is 0-3. Like, personally, I feel like I wish they went a different route. Honestly, slamming Xayah Rakan would have been interesting. Like that in itself would have been interesting. Or I don't know, just something else, man, because it's just not hitting. It clearly is not hitting. They took Orianna again. This time, these guys took Trist before it fell through, because it got banned last time. Right here. So this time they took Trist, and they took Nidalee again. So we're back on the Nidalee shit. This was like really strong. And then we get a Rakan. So we're Rakan like every single game. And keep in mind, for me personally, I feel like Busio has been like doing nothing. Like, he really hasn't really done much in these games. And neither has Lehens. Like, this is not even like a slam at Busio. Like, even though I'm not like, I don't think he's really done the best generally at Worlds, but like, the Hens didn't really do that much either. So cool. I mean, it's not like either supporter really having like the hugest impact. Rel Nautilus, Xin Zhao Vai, so we're still doing these kinds of bans for the Nidalee pick. Renekton Slam, even though it's like this time they switch it. So you notice here that like they realized that in this game they should have swapped it because of this, like some of these like interesting like big time counters that can come through. So they switched this because like if we're gonna take Renekton anyways, let's let our jungler who has a much bigger champion pool have a chance for an edge pick. And it ends up just being a Sejuani anyways, so it's like the value was not nearly as high, but the Renekton is still fine for the game, right? But you go into the game, it's going fine actually. For the most part, it's actually going fine. Even though like Chovy lost his flash level 1, like GenG's bot lane lost flash level 1. I forgot who. There was 3 flashes that were removed like very early on. But it wasn't until the... Oh, what was it? Oh, it wasn't until Masu was pressing Keen. He used his E, and Keen saw an angle, and he also knew that Rakan W was down, which, by the way, Lucio should never use his Rakan W. Just, like, hold it and just wait. That's all you have to do. Don't do anything weird. Just hold it. But he used it, and Keen got onto Masu and ran him down. And Masu had flash. I think Masu probably could have lived, but once he died, that kind of just like that just broke the whole game open. Like it literally was a disaster mistake because Keen got to shove the bot solo all the way in, and during that entire time, you know, GenG are just like chilling out now while their Kasante's strong, and the Kasante became just a menace. Like he was actually unkillable. You know, FlyQuest put so many resources on trying to kill Keen over and over again, and it just didn't work. It just didn't. And during that entire time as well, Canyon, again, on his Nidalee bullshit, is just farming up. And he's finding a couple picks here and there. And he's just incredibly strong. And Inspired can't do anything because he picked Sejuani, and it's not a kind of pick that can really do much in that case. And I think they really could have benefited in the end if Busio was just doing a lot more. You know, if Busio was able to find better flanks, more interesting plays, join his jungler more, I think they had a reasonable shot. But it's just not happening. Like I thought the Maokai pick was terrible. Like this was just like a dead pick. Because if you think about it, if Maokai W's on the Rakan, he's just gonna get knocked up instantly. Like Rakan can literally gain distance and still knock up the Maokai. Like it's really bad. And he doesn't want to W into these guys either. So it's just a dead pick. But they still won because like this guy was just Thanos. Like this was literally Thanos. So that was really rough. This was a really rough game to lose because regardless of like the things you could talk about with the draft, it was a very winnable game for FlyQuest. But they just made a couple mistakes and GenG just took it. Then we get into the last game, and then this was the funniest shit ever. And keep in mind, during this entire time, you can clearly tell in these first 2 games, like Jinx, Kassadin, like, and then they tried something a little bit more early based, that doesn't have like the same swinging power later on, and it fell apart. We go back on some more like scalers, you want to say, or so, and then they go full on, just absolutely like just said, fuck the old meta or fuck the new meta. We're just gonna play what our original like good shit was, and that's literally what they did. Both teams chose comfort in this. FlyQuest chose. Keep in mind, Yona's not exactly the most comfort pick for him. But they chose Fiddlesticks, which is a unique pick. Masu, very well known as a Calista player. Set, awful pick, by the way. Just dog shit. And they took Alistar. But like Smolder, Rumble, Ziggs, like this is all comfort. This is what the old meta comps were. And this game, you know, Whipple did absorb a lot of pressure. Though I will say that's mostly because GenG just sucks at like actually making plays. So and I feel like his Skarner at this point, Canyon Skarner, has been very whatever, to be honest. But the set did have its uses, but it eventually just kind of did nothing because it's set. The Fiddle didn't use his first R. I think the Fiddle's first R was at like 20 to 21 minutes. Like, it was way late. Like, they did not make any fucking plays with this champion. He just farmed up. The Skarner was even CS, and so that didn't really do anything. The Ziggs was pretty chill. Just did his thing. Nothing crazy happened. And the Smolder had 225 stacks. He had 225 stacks at like 19 minutes. Like, he farmed the shit out of mid. It was not even close. And because you play Fiddlesticks, you can't really make too many plays until you're level 6. And because he didn't make any really interesting plays until then, you know, this guy just completely owned. And then by the time you get into mid-late situations, like, Set is just eating the Qs. Like, for free. Like, he can't, like, what's he gonna do? Same with Alistar. So much of the game just rides on, like, Fiddlesticks just having this unique R, like, you know, this, like, surprise ulti that, like, kills you. But it's impossible when your lanes are just losing and you have no control. Like, they just have all the vision. So at the end of the day, the Fiddlesticks didn't really become much. This champion was bad. And the Alistar doesn't really do much. So, yeah. And to be honest, typically, you don't really just take Kalista as a standalone. Like, usually you want to take your bot lane together. So this ended up being a little weird. And they kind of just faltered in the last game. You know, they just kind of just got slowly ran over, and that was it. And GenG won the way I thought they were going to win in this series. That's why I said 3-0. But FlyQuest did put up a very, very good fight. I mean, they have basically 2 veterans. We have top, jungle, mid, bot, and support. And so we have a vet, 1 year, rookie, and a 1 year. So, like, I don't really call, like, people who've had, like, already a year under their belt a vet. So mid and support are not vets. So you have a true rookie, 2 mostly new competitors, and 2 veterans. And you take this team that deep, guys who literally have won Worlds and 1 MSI, who have, like, ample LCK experience. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So, I gotta say, like, whew, at this point, 1-3, 1-3, 0-3, 0-3, 2-12. Rough. Really, really rough. Now, like I said, I thought, like, I had the right ideas for HLE BLG still, but man, it flipped into BLG's favor hard from the fighting. And at this point, this is the 3rd team now who really struggled, who went on a long break. Like, LNG, both the teams that went 3-0 really struggled to get their shit together. And so, again, this makes me feel like having a 2-week break is really bad. Like, it almost feels like you should lose on purpose, because it's just, you're getting less stage experience. You're not able to, like, adapt and see, like, play these kinds of things on stage more. Yeah, sure, you get the hide stuff, which should be your advantage, right? You're hiding stuff. But it didn't even look like GenG hid much. You know, maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is, like, they're trying to save picks for the next round. And, like, they wanted to beat FlyQuest with that minimum showing. And that could be a very resounding strategy in the end of the day, right? Maybe that's what they thought. Because they still at least played far better than the way LNG played. But I don't know. This 2-week break seems like it's pretty rough for these teams. And then they had a 1-week break, and then they had, I think both these teams had a 1-week break. Yeah, I think both these teams had a 1-week break. But T1 just looked infinitely better. And it was just a flip of the coin that I assumed Tess would just not show up that day. So knowing this, guys, knowing this, what do we think is going to happen in the next series? Weibo versus BLG. Honestly, oh, man. I mean, for me, ooh, I got smaller. For me, I feel like this is just going to be a 3-1 BLG. And I feel like this is just going to be a... This is kind of like a more surprising call, because like I don't know exactly sure if this is how it's going to go down. But so the reason why I'm doing 3-1, so for one, this is just like a respect game with victory for Weibo, because Weibo does have the capacity to surprise, and BLG still isn't like 100% consistent to like just win out. But clearly, as we saw in this series, Ben is the fucking man, and Elk is back. Like, this guy is definitely back, and now that you have two, like, and also of course Knight, just still the fucking man as well. So at this point, your core carries are so damn good. I just find it hard to believe that they'll lose the Weibo. It just seems very difficult to see them lose to Weibo, because they're just so fucking good. And for Weibo to continue their performances with the way Breathe is, I don't know. I just can't see it. So I feel like this is a pretty easy call to say that they're gonna beat Weibo. For T1 GenG, after watching GenG today, I feel like because they had to revert to scaling to beat FlyQuest, and T1 is a team that has way more pick options, by the way. Like, yes, the way Whippo plays is pretty unique for the tournament in that he plays things like Urgot, Set, you know, whatever. But for Zeus, like, it's much more upfront. Like, I will be playing the Gnar, I'll be playing the Camille, I will do the Jack stance, I'll be playing, maybe I'll be playing Gwen. Like, it's a lot like scarier for Keen to deal with, because these are champions that will be like absolute units in the side lane, compared to Blippo, who's like trying to find flank plays and like absorb pressure in that sense and then buy his team time. That's like kind of like how Keen's like very good at that too. But Zeus will just take your take your life, which is like much more annoying to deal with. Owner's been solid. Faker is literally finding his way. And Chovy, oh man. Chovy is like, I don't want to say he's choking, but there's definitely a case of Chovy just like not performing to the level he should. Like, I think the fact that he chose Cassidy in game 2, just regardless of whether how you see it as it being like, oh, this is a really insane pick because it's like Nunu Oriana and like he could just like roll over the game. And yeah, like I said, like, I mean, that is what happened in some sense, but it accelerated by a ton because of the champions that their opponents picked. But I feel like for him, he could have just taken any mage into the Ori and he'd win. Like, where's the Chovy confidence to just be like, I'm gonna beat you with whatever, no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just pick a mage that's gonna be effective for the entire game for my team with Nilly, and I'm gonna beat you. Because he can. He literally can. But I didn't really see that Chovy. I really didn't. So that's like a little worrisome. And we have little Pays, who's just like, now I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm a bit of a Pays hater. I am a little bit of a Pays hater, and that's because I firmly believe that he is not. I mean, he's never gonna be at the levels of Elk or Viper or even Masu in some senses, in terms of just knowing how to just completely own a fight. I just don't think so. I've never seen that happen for him for the most part. Like, he just plays a very solid front to back. Like, he is like that guy. Like, he'll play a solid front to back of not dying, no dying, and this is like something like Bao would do. Like a Korean import in ERLs. Like, I watched that guy, and he would do a ton of damage. He was always very strong. But he mostly always needed someone to be creating the space for him, and him just playing that way. It's rare to see Pays be the guy who's doing that for the rest of his team. His team's doing that, all the hard work for him. He's not doing any like much hard work for his team. So because of that, he misses out on these really, really key moments that you just, sometimes that's just what you need from your AD carry, that Elk will do, that Viper will do, like I said. And he needs to like level up and show that. Because if his other teammates are not performing, because even Canyon to a degree was like kind of whatever. And don't get me wrong, also Lehens is like just not nearly looking as good either. Like, Lehens is like, Like I said, I thought both supports were invisible in this series for the most part. So imagine that, and then you remember how Keria looked in his series versus Tess. He was a fucking monster. That guy was insane. That guy hard carried so many situations, and he has very specific picks, like the Bard, Rakan, Poppy, and now he showed a Pike that just do things that supports normally can't do because that's just how they're designed. And it lets him be way more creative than you typically would see. And he can probably still play like a Lux or something like that and have an insane skill shot accuracy. Like, that is going to be a huge worry for GenG to deal with. And if your Chovy is not playing to par, Keen is. I'll say that right now. Keen is. Keen definitely could be the man to beat Zeus. He really could. Because he's looking good. But Chovy is not playing at the level he needs to. Canyon, Skarner looked kind of iffy, to be honest, like the way he plays it in fights. And like I said, their bot lane is not looking too hot. Meanwhile, T1 is red hot, and they just have greater champ pools to mess around with. So for me, I just feel like this is like, it looks like it's setting up for T1 to 3-1 unless GenG was hiding things. But we'll see. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like and comment on what you think will happen in the semifinals. I won't lie, we're doing pretty bad so far from the quarterfinals. Maybe I can make it up in the semis. We'll see. Thanks for watching. See ya.